Okay, bear with me. I just recorded this entire thing and my audio was not working. It should be working now, but I'm going to do a review here, a quick review and breakdown here of The Bad Batch Episode 3 Replacements. And it's a little bit of a shorter episode than even from last week, which was the second episode of last week. There was 2 episodes last week, but the second one was cut and run, and this one picks up right after. So I'm going to go over the 2 storylines. It's kind of like a split storyline episode. So there's one really interesting one and one that's kind of basic and, not as interesting. But the not as interesting one is actually with the Bad Batch. So you start off with them crashing down on some random moon or a planet or whatever, and you enter this storyline that you've kind of seen in Star Wars before, probably like Rebels and even Clone Wars and whatever. This storyline where even in The Mandalorian, actually they did something like this in The Mandalorian, where you end up on a planet and your ship is crashed and you got to fix it, and you deal with the creatures on that planet. So Omega and them want to go out and fix the ship, and Tech and Echo are out there fixing the ship. So while they start that storyline, they also kick it off with Crosshair. So they jumped the Crosshair storyline. So we didn't see him in the last one, but we see him in this one. And this is like a 2 storyline episode. A lot of stuff happens in this episode that we don't necessarily see in the last one. So it's really cool to see this split storyline. But we see Crosshair here, and we get this new commander or admiral, or I don't even remember his name, but he's this new character that we saw in the last one, actually in the hologram. But he's in this one too, and he's kind of implementing the new recruit system instead of using clones. So we're going to see this whole storyline with the Empire now transitioning from clones into just normal recruits for stormtroopers. So he brings in this crew here, this squad for Crosshair to go out and complete a mission, and he wants to see how well Crosshair can train these recruits and test them out and just see how they would do in the field instead of clones. So he wants a clone. Crosshair, he is an enhanced clone to lead this squad of recruits. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and we always thought these were like clones at first in the trailers because they're wearing clone armor and they kind of look like Death Troopers with the green visors. But this is like a recruitment here for people that they have recruited. So we jump back to the storyline with the Bad Batch, and the ship is broken. They're trying to fix it. Tech and Echo are out there trying to fix it, and they're Echo's looking around, hearing some things, and of course there's like a creature on the planet. But we jump back to, of course, Tarkin and this new admiral on Camino, and they're trying to see how this whole dynamic of Crosshair, testing out the recruits and training the recruits to be good soldiers, because clones are very, very efficient soldiers. So they're going to obviously have a clone try to train these recruits to be good soldiers. And the Kaminoans, of course, are very, very wary of this, because their cloning is their biggest thing. If they don't use clones anymore, then there's a major problem, right? They're pretty much useless then, right? So we jump to this scene right here. Already one of the recruits in the batch here are questioning Crosshair because he's a clone and he thinks recruits are more efficient than clones, and obviously we know clones are much more efficient than a recruit. But this guy is very, very cocky, and of course we get those typical characters that show up. Essentially though, they've been sent to take out Saw Gerrera's camp that we saw in episode 1, and unfortunately for the Empire, Saw Gerrera has mostly left already, and there's only a few more camps that are set up, and they're leaving. So they end up running into like the last camp, really, or the group of people that are now leaving, and it's pretty much just a few of his soldiers along with innocent people. And we jump to Omega then. Of course, the storyline's all over the place, but I'm just jumping through my screenshots here. But we jump back to the storyline, and essentially Hunter and Omega are out and about on this planet or moon that they crashed on, and they're trying to hunt down this creature that took their device. They need it to fly off. They need this device to fly off. So essentially they need to go retrieve it because it stole it. Because this creature, I don't remember what they called it, but it feeds off of energy or whatever. So it stole the device to feed off of its energy. But essentially Omega and Hunter, they have this, again, their weird dynamic that they're setting up in this show. And Hunter ends up fighting this creature, and his mask, his breathing mask, gets flown off. It flies off in the fight, and he can't breathe, so he passes out. But he's all right, of course. But Omega, of course, goes off goes off, and she is now set to do this on her own, which we've seen this type of stuff before as well. They're going to send her off and see how she does in this show, and that's what they're doing with her. So we jump back to this scene right here with Crosshair and his squad, and this is a really dark scene. It's actually quite a dark scene for this show, and I'm very surprised that we actually got to see this, but it's really cool. Really cool scene. Crosshair and the squad, his recruitment squad, essentially take out Saw Gerrera's soldiers. They ambush them and they execute them. They execute all the soldiers, which was the mission, of course, so nothing surprising there, but Crosshair wants to take things further. So his inhibitor chip is doing more than just Order 66, but they're very compliant with this empire, this brand new empire. And Crosshair wants to kill everybody. He wants to wipe out everybody there. He doesn't just want to wipe out the soldiers, which they did. He wants to wipe out the innocent people that were there trying to get off the planet, which is Onderon, of course. And then one of the recruitments, the one I talked about earlier, who was questioning Crosshair, mentioned that they're not here to kill innocents. They're here to take out the soldiers and the insurgents, and that was their mission. So they're not going to kill innocents, and Crosshair does not like that. So Crosshair shoots the guy, and then he turns his guns to the innocent people here, and he tells the recruitment squad to fire upon them, and they do. They kill the innocents, so that was a very dark scene. I honestly didn't expect them to go through with it. I thought maybe something would have interrupted this happening, but it ended up with them shooting down the innocent people there, so they wiped out the entire camp that they ended up running into. So again, very dark scene to see, but it was very cool, and I'm glad we get to see these things instead of just them skipping out on that type of stuff, considering, some people might consider it too dark for an animated show, but it's Star Wars. Stuff like this happens in Star Wars, We jump into the storyline with Omega, and she realizes that the flashlight that she's holding, it can distract this creature so she can get the device, so she throws her flashlight aside so it can feed off the energy from the flashlight, and she ends up getting the device for the ship back. So it's not much going on in that storyline, but essentially that storyline is they get their ship, they crash, they have to fix their ship, their device gets stolen from a creature who feeds off energy. Of course it has to feed off energy, and they have to go track it down, get it back, and figure out a whole way to get it back. Of course they get it back and they fly off. That's the whole storyline with the Bad Batch. There's not a whole lot going on, but we jump back, of course, to Tarkin and this new admiral, and they talk about how they came back with one less member, and they don't really mention what Crosshair actually did, but very interesting. Interesting that they didn't bring that up, honestly, but I thought they would. I thought they would bring it up and have a whole discussion about it, but they didn't. Maybe they will later, but they came back and the mission was completed, so they're not necessarily upset with them. The mission was completed. They wiped out what they at least saw there, and that was that. The ending of the episode ends with the Kaminoans, and they're concerned about the Empire using recruits rather than clones, so they're trying to come up with this plan to make a more efficient soldier. And it's kind of hinted at the end of the episode that they need the Bad Batch to be there so they can perhaps use them for a template to make more enhanced clones rather than the normal clone. They want more efficient soldiers than even a normal clone, and that is what the Bad Batch would be. So I don't know what this storyline is set to do, but it is very interesting. So we jump to Crosshair, and he's back at his bunker, and he's just contemplating things, and it's very interesting because you think Crosshair is very compliant with the chip and inhibitor chip in the Empire, but then you see a scene like this at the end where he's just kind of like thinking, it's like, is he really that compliant? I don't think Crosshair, throughout everything, I don't think he is as fully committed and compliant with the chip than, say, a normal clone is. I think he's still got his altered mind, his enhanced mind, and he's still an enhanced clone. He's part of the Bad Batch, so I think his chip is still not working completely right, and I still think he's got some doubts there that are kind of being overshadowed, of course, by this chip that is pretty much controlling him. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do with him. I'm very, very interested. Crosshair is probably my favorite storyline so far in this. The Bad Batch is still kind of finding their footing on what they're going to do with that storyline, but they're going to run into Rex eventually, so I mean, I'm sure it's going to pick up eventually, but for now they're just kind of running around on their own little missions. But the Crosshair storyline is definitely fascinating, and the end of the episode essentially ends with Wrecker. He was left behind, by the way, because He had like a headache. I would assume it's from the crash, but some people are thinking maybe it could be with his chip. Something going wrong with his chip. Who knows what they're going to do there? That could be an interesting storyline, but we don't know. But he was behind on the ship, and he put together like a little room or an area for Omega to rest. You know, it's like her own little room in the ship because they all have their own little bunker in the ship. So that was kind of cool, but not a whole lot happened with that side story. So they end up flying off. Of course, you know, their ship is fixed, and that is that. But the episode, it was a really good episode. You know, it was a split story episode. We've seen this before in different shows, like Clone Wars and Rebels, and we've seen this before. It's just a split story, and of course, it's not really a split story too, because it's kind of, you know, the whole story in total, and we're just seeing two sides of it. You know, we're seeing what Crosshair's up to along with the Bad Batch, and Crosshair is part of the Bad Batch, but he's with the Empire right now. So it's a very interesting dynamic that they're setting up, and I'm very interested in what they're going to do. But it was a much better episode than last week. Last week was really boring, in my personal opinion. It wasn't that bad, but it was very boring. But this episode, it picked up a lot. And it was very, very good. I thought it was a really good episode, and I'm very hopeful now. I'm very interested to see when Rex shows up and just seeing what they do. That's my review and quick breakdown of the Bad Batch episode 3 Replacements. I did only just watch this once, so that's kind of my whole thought process on everything after only just seeing it once. But I hope you guys enjoyed this quick one, and I'll see you guys next time.